Hi, Glenn. It's been a while since we've talked. So I was thinking I could just do a quick recap about the program for our audience, but also so we can refresh our memories about what happened. So last year in Montserrat, the Red Cross carried out a voucher program for families with many children who were suffering economically due to job losses and other hardships because of the pandemic. The families were able to exchange the vouchers for food in selected supermarkets, and it was a supplement to the support program run by the government, as you'd identified a gap for these larger families. You then asked the evaluation team from British Red Cross if they could review the program, as we normally do in all humanitarian assistance programs. So as the leader of this team, and due to COVID, I made the decision to carry out a remote evaluation, as of course it wasn't possible to travel to the island. We carried out the interviews using WhatsApp. So how did you, as the director of Montserrat Red Cross, find the process, and were the findings useful to you?
Well, thank you, Vivien. One of the problems was the time zone difference. That was an enormous challenge. I'm not sure how well, or even if the process overcame the challenges. A better way of doing this perhaps would have been to engage a local independent person to conduct the research. If more persons or recipients were interviewed, the data may have shown that the program had a widespread impact, something that did not come out clearly in the evaluation. We conducted our own research, and the data certainly showed a higher level of impact. The vouchers had assisted families economically, but if the researcher had been on island and local, he or she would perhaps have been able to pilot the questionnaire to ensure it measures what it purports to measure. And the speech patterns of the researcher would likely have sounded more familiar. And perhaps recipients would have been more eager to share their thoughts. The MRC had to provide a list of recipients to be interviewed as part of the review. This approach provided some scope for the staff here to doctor that list so that only recipients who were likely to provide positive feedback were included. Obviously, that didn't happen, but the possibility existed. However, given the situation, I am not sure that there was a better way to do this. I think given the full set of circumstances, the time differences, the pandemic, the language issues, there weren't that many options available. Of course, this director had received cash transfer training, which came in quite useful in the design of this project. But in terms of the review, I think the discussion between Vivien and myself was quite fun. But as I said earlier, the outreach to recipients for the interviews could have presented a totally different picture if that was done differently. But let me ask you a question though, Vivien. As a team leader for the evaluation from the British Red Cross in London, you were not able to visit Montserrat, so you could not know the context. You were only able to interview 6 recipients and 4 volunteers, plus a couple of supermarket owners. Now, can you describe for us some of the challenges you had to completing the interviews?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I don't know Montserrat. I've never been there, unfortunately. And obviously before COVID, I would have come there and I would have interviewed people out in the community. So yes, you're right. The biggest constraint was not being able to talk to the recipients of the vouchers. And as you also mentioned, the other challenge was the time difference and getting hold of people, especially the volunteers. Several people wanted to be interviewed after work, which was for me 10 p.m. my time. Quite often they were busy. So one lady was cooking dinner while I interviewed her. I could hear the onions frying in the background. So I had to be really flexible with some of the times. Also, some people were suspicious about getting a WhatsApp call from a stranger in London asking questions about the vouchers. Yeah, we could have used a local consultant, but they wouldn't have known about how the Red Cross does cash programming. In another Caribbean evaluation, we used Red Cross staff from another island to do interviews, and that actually worked quite well. But in the end, however, nothing really replaces face-to-face interactions. What I have learned from this is that while interviews with staff, other actors, and local government can be done online, community interviews really need to be face-to-face.
I totally agree with you, Vivien. Thank you for that. But can I ask you another question though? Would you do this kind of evaluation again sometime in the future?
Well, I guess obviously I'd need to consider some of the constraints that have been identified by other people doing the same kind of work, such as inclusion and accuracy of data. We had a very small sample size, which, although normal for qualitative data, didn't give us the certainty of results that we needed. It's something you've talked about. And these issues would have to be addressed. I do think, however, that hybrid models, where some interviews are online and others are face-to-face, can work. As spending less time in a country obviously is more cost effective. But it would depend on the context. And one would need to consider the cultural aspects, connectivity, language, and how used to using WhatsApp people were. Thanks, it's been really interesting to recap again on this. And I really hope that our short video will be useful for other people doing the same kind of work.
I'm sure it will. Thank you, Vivien.